At Motegi, the king sealed his empire again. A 7th world title, 11 wins, 14 sprints, 5 rounds to spare. Marc Marquez didn't just win 2025. He burned it into history with his initials branded on every throttle trace. Then, within 2 weeks, he was on the asphalt of Mandalika, his GP25 cartwheeling through the tropical heat as Marco Bezzecchi's Aprilia clipped him into silence. A broken collarbone, torn shoulder ligaments, the same cursed joint that nearly ended his career in 2020. Ducati called it precautionary. The paddock called it fate replaying a nightmare. Marquez called it Tuesday. But this time, there's more at stake than titanium plates or rehab exercises. Jorge Lorenzo, his old sparring partner, issued a warning colder than the winter testing air. When a rider starts thinking about what might break, something inside him already has. That's the line dividing warriors from survivors. The moment instinct becomes calculation. Marquez has spent his life defying anatomy, physics, and good sense. But even gods need bones to fight with. And when Ducati's empire already shows cracks under Aprilia's relentless rise, what happens when their champion, their entire system, sits out the final battles of the year? Question: when the body begins to fear the crash, does the soul still deserve the throttle? Comment below and tell me, has the fire faded, or is this just the silence before the detonation? In the red fortress of Bologna, panic wears a polite smile. Ducati's MotoGP department is running simulations, dissecting frame stiffness, and pretending this is all under control. It's not, because Marquez isn't a replaceable part. He's the equation itself, and his equation just snapped a variable. After Motegi, Ducati's board was preparing another champagne parade, but the Indonesian weekend flipped the tone from celebration to concern. The crash wasn't catastrophic on paper, but the timing was a knife. With Marc out, Ducati was forced to face an old nightmare. What does this factory look like without its monster? Meanwhile, Jorge Lorenzo was sitting in a studio, analyzing every microexpression of the paddock. He's no stranger to broken bodies. His own collarbones were practically regular season trophies. On his YouTube show Dura la Vida, he didn't mince words. In the last years of your career, you suffer a bit physically, and this is also dangerous mentally. You start thinking, if I have a high side, I might break again. That changes everything. That's not critique, that's diagnosis. Lorenzo's statement cut through the Ducati camp because it wasn't gossip. It was truth spoken from the same altitude. He knows what happens when an apex predator starts measuring risk. Jack Miller tried to deflect the fear with flattery, calling Marc a racehorse, saying he'd gallop again in no time. Cute. But Miller's metaphors don't change the brutal arithmetic of age, injury, and reflex. Marquez's camp, led by his brother Alex and trusted surgeon Dr. Mir, wanted to avoid the 2020 trap, rushing back for meaningless laps and ending up chasing ghosts for half a decade. Ducati, for once, agreed. No Valencia test, full rest. Behind closed doors, though, there's a darker conversation looping in Gigi D'Aligna's mind. If Marquez comes back slower, just 2%, does Ducati's aura collapse with him? And in that same room sits Pecco Bagnaia, staring at telemetry he no longer understands. He's the reigning ghost of an old order, trying to decode the GP25 that Marc tamed by chaos. Question: when Jorge Lorenzo warns of fear, is it prophecy or projection? And when Ducati's machine depends on one man's bones, is that engineering or addiction? Drop your thoughts below. Who's really holding Ducati together? Let's rewind to the scene that changed the rhythm of 2025. Mandalika. First lap. Bezzecchi dives. The Aprilia twitches, slides, regains grip, straight into Marquez's shoulder. The world champion's GP25 cartwheels across the gravel like a weapon losing its master. The impact was violent, but the real damage came from the awkward angle of his arm. Not snapped, but torqued, the kind of hit that ends seasons quietly. Within hours, Ducati issued a neat press statement. Minor fracture, shoulder ligament strain, successful procedure. The usual corporate anesthesia. But anyone who remembers 2020 could see the ghost moving again. Because once you've had a bone rebuilt, it never truly forgets. Since that crash, Marquez has completed exactly one of the last 6 MotoGP seasons in full. That's not stats, it's survival math. The man keeps dragging his skeleton through infernos to maintain an empire that feeds on his defiance. And the paddock? It smells blood. Aprilia's Marco Bezzecchi, unrepentant, has turned into the new chaos merchant. He's won 3 of the last 4 sprints, proving that Noala's rebellion is real. Raul Fernandez added insult by winning Australia for Trackhouse. Ducati's double wall of dominance just got breached from 2 fronts. This is where Lorenzo's warning finds teeth. The moment Ducati needs Marc to push harder next season, his body might whisper no. It's not about courage anymore. It's about consequence. The GP25 isn't a Honda. You can't save it mid-slide by brute will. It's a missile tuned for trust. Lose that microscopic faith in your shoulder, and every braking zone becomes a chess match between instinct and self-preservation. Ducati knows it. Marquez knows it. Lorenzo smells it. That's why the new Jorge Martin rule was quietly born. Riders missing races through injury get an extra test day next season. Ducati calls it a procedural update. Everyone else calls it what it is, a safety net for their king. Marc will use that extra day to test his limits. The first real handshake between his body and the 2026 campaign. And the question is merciless. Will he still twist the throttle like someone who doesn't care if it kills him? Question: can Ducati survive a version of Marc Marquez that rides like a man with something to lose? Comment your verdict. Subscribe if you live for this kind of battlefield truth. This isn't the first time we've seen a hero's body turn against him. Rossi's shoulder in 2010. Lorenzo's wrists in 2013, Pedrosa's collarbone in 2015, all stories of human limits whispering to immortal egos. But with Marquez, the pattern is biblical. 2020's shattered humerus, 4 surgeries, nerve complications, blurred vision, years of recovery, and yet he clawed his way back to a Ducati seat and destroyed everyone in 2025. That's the cruelty of his legend. He doesn't stop until the universe does it for him. The difference now is context. Back then, he was saving Honda from extinction. Now, he's the pillar of Ducati's dynasty. When he falls, the ripple hits engineers, sponsors, and the fragile psyche of his teammate. Because Pecco Bagnaia's form this year has been a slow-motion implosion. The GP25 refuses to obey him. The bike that Marquez turned into an extension of his madness, Pecco treats like a hostile stranger. No grip, no rhythm. No confidence. So when Ducati's statement said, Marc will miss the remainder of the season, the real translation inside Borgo Panigale was, we just lost our lighthouse. That's why the air feels different. The Ducati garage looks too tidy. The laughter is forced. Every mechanic remembers the old Honda paddock silence from 2020 when the number 93 disappeared and chaos swallowed the Repsol box. The irony is poetic. The same ghosts that Honda never escaped now knock at Ducati's door. And there's Jorge Lorenzo again, sitting with that smug, knowing smirk, saying the quiet part out loud. You suffer physically, and that's dangerous mentally. He's right, but incomplete. The real danger isn't in the pain, it's in the hesitation. Marquez built his legend on violent certainty. Any fraction less, and he's human again. Aprilia smells it. KTM sees it. Ducati fears it. Question: when a man who defines danger begins to measure it, does he lose his weapon or just change the battlefield? Drop your answer in the comments if you still believe fear can coexist with fire. Now strip away the drama and look at the math. Ducati's dominance was built on 2 foundations, mechanical superiority and Marquez's psychological warfare. Both are cracking. Aprilia's late-season surge has exposed how fragile Ducati's setup philosophy is without Marc's brutality. The GP25's front-end sensitivity, its corner entry demands, and its traction control dependency, all of it makes it a scalpel in the right hands and a suicide note in the wrong ones. Pecco Bagnaia is the living proof of that paradox. The same rider who ruled the GP23 era is now trapped in a labyrinth of datasheets that mock him. Ducati's engineers don't know if it's setup, geometry, or spirit, but whatever it is, it's fatal to consistency. And now, as Marc rehabilitates under winter's fluorescent lights, Ducati's mind is already racing toward 2026. If he returns cautious, if he returns calculated, then the entire factory has to rethink its DNA. Because the man they signed was not just fast, he was fearless. He was chaos in human form. Without that chaos, Ducati becomes Aprilia. Beautiful, efficient, beatable. That's why the Jorge Martin rule isn't just bureaucracy, it's Ducati's lifeline. They need every hour of testing to resync Marc's madness with the GP25's machine code. But behind that, a quiet truth lingers. Lorenzo's warning isn't prophecy, it's a mirror. Every MotoGP great ends up chasing his own reflection, wondering when the line between warrior and relic blurs. Marquez isn't done, not even close. But the risk is no longer the crash, it's the thought before the crash. That's the curse of consciousness. Still, there's one line Ducati doesn't want to hear, but must. The longer Marquez heals, the heavier the silence grows for Bagnaia. He becomes the reluctant heir, forced to lead an army that only listens to a ghost. And when the 2026 lights go out, all eyes will hunt for that first braking zone. If Marquez dives like he used to, the legend resets. If he hesitates, the myth ages overnight. Final pulse. This absence doesn't just test Marquez's bones, it tests Ducati's belief system. Because somewhere between courage and consequence lies the thin line where champions decide if they're still built for war. And in that flicker of hesitation, Aprilia is ready to strike. This will put more pressure on Pecco Bagnaia to put his GP25 up front, something that looks impossible right now, given his collapsing form and shattered confidence. But he can't afford to take this to heart. He must use this quiet winter not to doubt the machine, but to understand it. Because Ducati doesn't need more panic, it needs clarity. When Marquez returns, the factory must stand with two riders capable of fire, not one legend and one ghost. Question: is this the start of Ducati's reckoning, or the rebirth of its twin flames? Comment what you believe. Subscribe for more savage breakdowns. We're just getting started.